Hey everyone, this is Attorney Andre. Now I'm going to talk about a topic of fundamental importance to your way of life. I'm not bluffing. Stay tuned. Check what I'm about to tell you. But also, stay towards the end. Watch the whole video through because at the end I got a little bit of a surprise for you. I got a special treat. I want to help you out. Now, here is what I'm talking about. If you know TikTok, everyone knows what TikTok is. TikTok is being totally banned or they have to be forced to sell. So the Biden administration and the legislature, it's both branches of government, Republican, Democrat, both of these people are at fault. Both of these parties are at fault. So they made a law, and that has a universal package, an aid package to Ukraine, an aid package to Israel, an aid package for this and that, but they've squeezed into it a ban on TikTok. And what they're saying is that TikTok has a year to either completely sell, in which case it divulges its algorithm, it sells to somebody else, probably Facebook or a competitor, or they have to leave the United States and not do business in the United States. Now, this is a problem for two reasons. We're in the United States of America. We're not in China. We're in the United States of America. And in the United States of America, there is a freedom of enterprise. Now, that freedom of enterprise, frankly, is not enshrined in any constitution. And TikTok said that they're going to sue if this law comes into effect, which it certainly will. Joe Biden already signed it as of today. It will come into effect, and it's probably going to tank the stock price or whatever of TikTok, and probably increase the stock price of whatever company is probably seeking to buy it. But that's not neither here nor there. What is TikTok going to do?
What's he gonna do?
Well, TikTok is definitely going to sue. I mean, they even said it. TikTok said they're going to sue. So what will they sue on? How will they win? Well, probably most likely they would sue under a freedom of enterprise. So they would say that this is the United States of America. We have a freedom of enterprise. We have a freedom of liberty. I should be able to do any legal business I want. And TikTok is not an illegal business. They're not selling drugs. They're not doing anything bad. They are just, a social media company. A social media company that captures the attention of millions and billions of viewers across the United States. And what the government is saying is they've got a legitimate interest, a legitimate government interest, and keep that in mind, a legitimate government interest that they need to curtail the freedom of enterprise of TikTok. Now, the other argument is that TikTok or any other company, they can't argue freedom of enterprise because it's not in the Constitution. If you look in the Constitution, there's freedom of speech, there's the right to bear arms, there's freedom of the press, there's freedom of religion, right? You know that, but there is no freedom of enterprise. And John Adams, he prophesied, he wanted a freedom of enterprise. And in fact, a lot of the founding fathers talked about a freedom of enterprise, and they talked about what's called a benign government. A benign government meaning that the government is not going to get in your way. The government is going to let you do what you want to do freely, and the only way that's going to be curtailed is if there is some kind of violation of the law. TikTok does not violate the law, but they can't sue under this freedom of enterprise because just because the founding fathers wanted it to be that way doesn't mean it's that way. So what will they sue under? The founding fathers will sue under what's called a freedom of speech argument. And the freedom of speech argument says that the United States government cannot stop TikTok because TikTok is a form of speech. It's a platform where people can express themselves. They can dance, they can talk about whatever they want to talk about, but essentially it's a platform for the people. Another way to put it is it's a social media platform because it's a platform of the people, like YouTube, like Instagram. And by cutting off TikTok, you're essentially cutting off the voice of TikTok and cutting off the voice of the people. And therefore, there is no legitimate government interest that they can point to a single one that would allow for that to happen. The government is saying is they don't want China to get or foreign government to get our data, and they would have access to the data that TikTok has. And that is a legitimate concern. But I don't know if that reaches to the level of a concern to ban a company, especially with no actual evidence and just speculation. Now, for the government to win, they have to meet a very high burden. And let me tell you what that burden is. For the government to prevail, they've got to be able to show 4 criteria. And that 4 criteria is exactly what they need to show to beat TikTok. And even though these 4 criteria involve symbolic speech, it doesn't matter because it will probably be used. And here are the 4 criteria. It's outlined in a 1968 Supreme Court case, United States versus O'Brien. And here are the criteria. Number 1, the law or regulation must be within the government's constitutional power. So the government must have the power to regulate commerce. And they do have the power to regulate commerce, but they don't have the power to ban companies. They don't have the power to force a sale of companies unless those companies are a monopoly. If the companies are a monopoly, then under the Sherman Act, you can force a sale of the companies, or you can disallow a company from merging with another company, but you can't force a company to sell. It hasn't been done for the purposes of a national security, not for the purposes of what's called trust busting, but for the purposes of national security. So even on the first prong, the government loses to TikTok. Number 2, the law or regulation must further an important or substantial government interest. So there has to be a legitimate government interest, and it does work. They have a legitimate government interest in protecting national security, so they say. And even though it probably doesn't protect the legitimate national security interest, they're going to say it. It's probably in the bill, and therefore it meets the second burden, but very slim margins. It meets the second burden. Number 3, the law or regulation must not be related to the suppression of free speech. And that's the death knell, because this certainly, absolutely, fundamentally regulates free speech. If you ban TikTok, you ban a platform that I can talk on, that you can talk through, that TikTok can communicate through. You ban a social media platform. And that's why the government said you can either stop doing business in the United States or you can sell it. So the legitimate concern is not TikTok itself, but who it's associated with. But it doesn't really matter because still it stifles free speech. Just because you sell the platform doesn't do anything, but the government is adding that caveat there probably to get around this particular provision, but I don't think it's going to work. I think it's too broad. And the fourth and final thing is the impact of the law or regulation must be no greater than necessary to achieve the goal. And there are 100 things the government can do to regulate a business. The government already does 100 things to regulate businesses without actually banning the business. So those are the 4 criteria that the government must do in order to limit the free speech. And I think that this is going to be precedent setting, because not only is the Supreme Court going to interpret these 4 criteria, these 4 factors, but also the Supreme Court is going to finally establish law, not from a takings clause, but to establish law. What would it take for the government to say, no, you can't do business here. You are not welcome in the United States, especially under the gambit of this freedom of association and freedom of enterprise. Let me know, what do you think? Do you think this is all government overreach? Do you think TikTok is going to prevail? Do you think Joe Biden is going to lose the election and President Trump is going to reverse this? What do you think? Let me know. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. And here's a special treat. The special treat I have for you is, if you're trying to make a business in the United States, I have a checklist of every single thing that you need before you start a business in the United States. Let me know, comment or DM me. I'll send you that for free. I'm an attorney. Clients pay me so much money for me to give them this checklist, frankly, or for me to have a consultation with them. New businesses, aspiring businesses, there are a list of things you need to do. Let me know. I'll send it to you. Talk to you soon.